Welcome to our Tech Product Literacy Lab. So I'm down in the Tech Product Literacy module, and what we're going to be doing this week is your instructor is going to give you a scenario that you should find up at the top of your lab module that you're going to use to basically create a suitable computer for the scenario. What do I mean create a computer? Well, there's this website called PC Part Picker that will let us pick all of the parts that we need to build a PC. So what are all those parts? Well, we went over them in lecture, and you can find all the main parts are kind of described in this slide set. So today we're actually going to be putting what we've learned into practice and trying to think about what does this person actually need for this scenario. So I'll go ahead and show you the scenario I'm going to be using for this activity. Now this is an example scenario, so do not just assume that this is the scenario I'm giving you. It is not. This is the one I'm going to be using to walk through today's activity as a guide, so you have a process to follow. Okay? So let's go ahead and open these instructions. And the first thing we're going to need to do is actually download this file, because I have some tables that you're going to be filling in. So you need to basically be able to download a copy of this so you can edit it. So you'll actually see a view like this. There we go. And so you can just click download up here on the top right. And it looks like I've already got a copy. That's okay. I'll open this up. And what I'm going to do, and by the way, if you double click a document and it does not open in Word, but you know you have Word installed, you're not cooked. It just means that probably Word is not set as the default application to open files that end with that extension, docx. This can also happen with Excel on Macs, because it'll open in whatever the Mac spreadsheet editor is called. So to fix this, I can go to Downloads where the file is, and I can say Open With and choose Word. You can also go into your operating system's settings, and you can make this the default so that it'll always open in Word when you double click. But anyway, if that happens to you, don't worry about it. You can always force it to open with Word. Boy, I've got too many things open here. So you'll have to start by clicking Enable Editing, and then we'll go to Save As. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop this in my OneDrive folder so that it's backed up on the cloud somewhere. Just in case we're running Windows 11 these days, you never know what's going to happen. So I'm going to go, looks like I've already created that folder. But you can press Control-Shift-N. I think Command-Shift-N works in Finder too. And I'm going to make myself a new folder. And then I'm going to click into that folder. And instead of leaving this file name, I think I'll just go ahead and throw my name on the front of it. That way, I know that this is the version that I have edited, because I have seen a lot of cases where people they'll download like multiple copies of this, and then they'll upload one that is empty because they just downloaded it and saved it as some other name and basically share the wrong one. So double check your file, make sure it's the one you want to share before you hit that submit button. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for my scenario, my user is an office employee. They just need a basic desktop computer for things like word processing, spreadsheets, web browsing, and video calls. So they just need something that's reliable. They have a constrained budget. So that's going to be I'm going to factor that into my scenario. So let's go to pcpartpicker.com. I'm going to copy that. Ooh, where's my browser? Too many tabs. And we're going to click Start Your Build. Okay, clearly I've already started something. Let's get rid of this. So we are going to have to choose all of these things. Monitor, I didn't really make part of this lab, but you can choose one if you want. Okay, how do we get started? Where do we even start with this? Well, I'm glad you asked. My God, here we are. So I put together this little table for you, and I went ahead and filled in what it would be for this scenario that I'm currently working with. So for a kind of basic, reliable office computer, no fancy bells and whistles. And I try to think, how important is this factor, from 1 being it's not important at all to 5 being I need like the top line best of the best. And because we're just doing general purpose office work, then storage capacity, we need more kind of on the low end. So a few hundred gigabytes, probably okay. Storage speed, well, there again, because we're doing things like word processing and just downloading and working with spreadsheets and things like that, like no crazy video editing or huge 3D model files, the storage speed isn't really going to matter. And if you're like, well, where do we talk about that? It's in our lecture slides. So remember, we talked about different storage types, and we compared some of the advantages and disadvantages. And so in this case, probably we can get away with just a hard disk drive based on the fact that the storage speed doesn't really matter, and we can still get a high capacity for low cost if we want a higher capacity. I don't think the capacity is super important for our use case, though. And the CPU speed, well, it needs to be, again, part of this is we want something that's reliable for every day. So I'm going to rate this kind of in the middle. Like it's moderately important for a smooth workflow, and we have a decent CPU speed. And I would probably put this at a 2 for how many cores we should have for CPU being able to help with lots of high computation and multitasking, just because for the types of applications that we use for kind of basic office work, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, maybe, that might be more education, web browsing, none of that really needs to be using all your cores. So probably not going to need something super fancy there. RAM capacity, again, this is pretty important for allowing it to run smoothly once we have lots of applications. Because remember, as we load apps, each app loads a little bit of RAM. And what do we do a lot at work? We open a lot of different tabs. Every tab takes a little bit more RAM. So I'm not going to give this a 2, but it's definitely not nearly on the order that we would need if we were, playing the latest games with our mods or using giant 3D modeling software and things like that. So I put about a 3. And notice this isn't a science. This is just we're kind of just feeling this out. So it's okay if you're working through your scenario and you're like, well, should this be a 3 or a 4? Well, that's up to you to decide. And then external GPU video card, you can see I put a 1 there for not important. Why? Well, let's take a look at the slides. And remember when we talked about the GPU, we now have integrated graphics that are bundled with modern CPUs. These are good enough for basic office tasks, whereas we're not really going to need a video card, a dedicated external video card, unless we're doing more complex things like some of these things I listed here, 3D modeling, a lot of modern video games, especially AAA titles, video editing. We're essentially going to be throwing away money, and we're on a budget, so we don't need that. And budget consciousness, I put a 4 here because it's supposed to be a general purpose kind of office computer, so we need to be conservative on that front. So now it's time to research your professional software. So based on your scenario, think about one primary piece of software, at least one. You don't have to come up with 3. think of one that your person in your scenario is going to be using, one software application. If you have something that's like, you know that they are editing professional videos, then you know that they're going to need a video editing application. And so how you can start to find your piece of software is you search something like professional, let's search best professional video editing software. And you can see I've already done this in another take of the video. This, I don't like this because I can't scan it well. This is literally how I search, guys. That's a specific software. Tech Radar, there's a good one. Premiere Pro, DaVinci, Cyberlink, blah, blah, blah. And if we look at what Google Gemini says, kind of recommending similar options. So does it matter if one blog has the best ones in a different list and puts DaVinci at number 1? No. You're just going to pick one of these. So let's just go with Adobe Premiere Pro, because what we're really trying to do is find roughly what specs we need. Now, if you know they need some very specific software, then you need to, of course, research the specs for those. I'm just going to use Adobe Premiere Pro. And then what I'm going to search is recommended specs for specifications. And I guess I can't spell. But here we go. Here's what Gemini says. And if we don't trust Gemini, because it is good to fact check, especially if we're going to be spending a lot of money on this stuff, then we can try to go straight to the source. That is a forum post. I don't fully trust that. And we should find some good information there. Now, whenever they say minimum, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the best experience. Sometimes minimum is okay. Sometimes you won't be happy. And so if we're professional, we're working every day, we probably want to choose more than just a minimum spec. But I can take those specs, paste them in a text edit or notepad window, and this is what you're going to be filling in. So we have our, what is this? Our brain, our CPU. We have our memory/RAM. And we have, what is this last thing? NVIDIA RTX 3060. This is our GPU, or our video card. In my scenario, I'm not going to need one of these, but for video editors, you do. And so then what you're going to do is you're going to be pasting those in for recommended. I'm not so worried about these last 3. You can just do a quick Google search. What's a good CPU cooler for this type of CPU that I chose? And it should be fine. Motherboard, don't get bogged down too much on that one. And now, so I've shown you how I would start breaking it down for this video scenario. This is not my scenario, but let's just run with it for a second, and then I'll actually walk you all the way through based on the scenario that I have in front of me. So this is what we got recommended for our GPU. Let's say you're searching on PC Part Picker, and you can't find this one of these exact models that are mentioned. What you're really looking for is something with similar specs, okay? So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is very, very close to what we have listed here, the TI, just a slightly different variation. 1670 boost clock. So once again, that is the same measure that CPUs have, clock speed. And it's important for graphics cards too. You shouldn't know from looking right away. If you have, been buying these things for a while, then you might already recognize that, oh, this is a decent clock speed. But there's no reason you should know right away whether this is good or not. So that's why you search for the recommendation. You see, okay, they kind of recommend these models. Well, these models have a clock speed in this range. So I know that this is a pretty good clock speed for video editing. So I really just need something comparable to what they list here if I don't find the exact model that was listed as the recommended. So then I could scroll down and I could look and see something like this and say, Well, look, that's even more memory, or what you'll see called as VRAM. That's dedicated video memory, very fast, that only the graphics or the GPU can use. And so this would be something like this would be more than sufficient. This one is more in the realm of what we would want. Although we might even want to choose 12 gigabytes of memory. And this one would also be sufficient if it were in stock. Really, a lot, like all of these would totally work. So you don't have to worry about, like, is this the best possible balance? You just need something that works, something that is reasonable. That's how you go through that. So now let's go all the way through with mine. So for my software, remember, I just have a basic office computer. And I think the big piece of software that we're going to use is the Microsoft 365 or Office, whatever they're going to call it, suite of software applications. So that's your Word, your PowerPoint, your OneDrive, all that stuff. If I search Microsoft 365 apps size, let's see how much size it takes up. Or let's search installation, install size. 4 to 10 gigabytes. If it says 4 to 10, I'm going to assume 10 is how much it's going to take up. And then let's search the recommendations. So it's important to consider how big your software is if you're installing something very large. Let's search Microsoft Desktop Suite recommended hardware specs. Like that. So I'm doing the exact same thing that I was showing you for our video editing. If that were your software, I'm doing the same thing here. So what I can do is literally just like copy and paste this stuff. Oh boy. Let's copy and paste that in a Word document. And then I can just choose this. So it didn't give me a specific model of CPU, but that's okay. We don't need that. So in this next table, this is where you're going to paste in the recommendations you found. And in this case, the memory they're recommending is really for the apps themselves more than the total, because Windows 11 ain't even going to run on 4 gigabytes of RAM. That's why our minimum needs to be more like 16. 4 gigabytes of available disk space, they say. Display, don't need that. No graphics requirements. I think it has a lot to say about graphics, but basically, in this case, we know from lecture that for basic applications, we don't need a dedicated graphics card. Where did that one go? Let's say graphics. Okay. So now that I've got my recommendations copied over, and don't worry about these three so much, let's just do a quick search for those three. Now, I'm not going to, let's see. I don't want to pick a motherboard until I pick the CPU. And probably, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to gray these out so you don't have to research them, because I'll kind of show you why when we start picking our parts. So now that I have this, I'm going to start picking my parts. So I need 1.6 gigahertz or faster, 2-core. Well, I know just because I'm familiar with CPUs that Core i3 is sort of what I'm looking for here. If you didn't get the model, you could simply search, you know, common CPUs. let's say, or better. And then you'll get some decent recommendations that you can search through. But this will be good for just a general office build scenario. If we look at our baseline here, and we kind of compare that, okay, that's pretty similar. What's the difference between these two? One only has 2 cores. So just because I know we're going to be running Windows 11, because this is a office computer, I'm going to go for this one. So then what you're going to do is you're going to click on this, copy your name there, and then you're going to give a little bit of rationale of why. 4-core standard for smoothly running modern OS/apps. This should be enough based on Windows, based on software requirement. So 4 cores, yeah. So just something like that. You don't have to go too in depth with it. Because we could also note respectable clock speed. So remember when we're looking at like, okay, what are we evaluating in a CPU? You can find that in the slides. And so on my checklist, just based on kind of, computers I was using in the past and how snappy they were for basic tasks, I'm looking for normally a, back up a little bit. I'm normally looking for a clock speed that's in the range of at least like 2 to 4 gigahertz. And so that's how you can use that as a reference. 2 to 4 gigahertz, a good rule of thumb. And this one I think is plenty for what we're doing. GPU, none, not necessary for basic office tasks. Respect the budget. We can always add one of these later if we need it. So now we need at least about 16 gigs of RAM. Let's find us some memory. Oops, I guess I never clicked that. So we'll add that. And now I'm just going to search up here. I think I'll just search 16 GB. That didn't seem to do anything. 32, 16, 32. All of these are going to be fine. You'll notice that they'll say DDR4 and a number. And for those of you who are gamers, you actually care about that part after it, the DDR speed. You care about that number after it. For our use case for this lab, we're not going to go too much in detail. So pretty much anything that's DDR4 or 5 is going to be okay for these scenarios that we're giving you. So don't worry too much about looking into the technical specs here unless you just really want to. And then we're just going to choose something respectable here. So looking at the, let's see, price differences here, just because memory is so expensive right now. I might normally get 32 just because it's not that much more expensive than getting 16. But the price differences are big right now. Actually, this isn't that bad. So I'll click add. Click on this, get the name of it. Oh, this just asked for amount. Okay, so I didn't even ask for that much. 32 gigabytes. And the Y. So Y, 16 gigabytes is needed to smoothly run modern OSs. However you do that, OSs, especially Windows 11. However, the RAM I chose was not significantly more expensive for double the capacity. Ensures we have future-proofed this office computer for more RAM-hungry applications. Something like that. Okay. And then my storage, I'm going to need about 256 kind of minimum. How did I arrive at that number as kind of a baseline? Well, how much storage does Windows 11 base OS take up? Look that up. So if Windows 11, if by the time you installed it, it's already filled up 30 or maybe even 40 gigabytes, probably 40 based on its usage, when it loads things, apps that you use and their app data, you're probably going to be looking at 40 gigabytes of your hard drive gone, right? And then you start installing the apps you need, and you're going to need some free disk space for you to generate the files that you want to use. And so I'm thinking 100 gigabytes is going to get eaten up really quickly. So this would kind of be the minimum that we would need. So let's find us some storage. Now, there are two main types of hard drive that we covered in lecture. There is the solid state drive, if I can find it, the solid state drive and the hard disk drive. And I compared the differences for you on this slide. Now, for what we're doing in my scenario, just basic office stuff, no fancy high read-write speed stuff that I'm doing. HDD, the speed difference isn't going to matter. So I know I can get cheaper if I buy an HDD. Now, it's a mechanical part, but we're not carrying our desktop tower around. It just kind of sits somewhere, sits on the desktop, right? So I'm not even as concerned about this factor. And if it's cheaper, I can always replace it when I need to. So I think I'm going to choose this type because budget is more important to me in this case. And the speed's not going to matter so much. So these are different standards of hard disk. I'm going to choose 7200 RPM. Not that it really matters for this. And most of them, you're going to find that the capacity is a terabyte or more. Terabyte's 1,000 gigabytes. So that should be plenty. And if we look, so why did I choose well more storage than I probably need for a standard office build? Well, go back here. Let's choose all three. Well, I'm trying to even find a smaller one. But basically what I was going to show you is the price difference is so insignificant that you might as well get more when you're buying hard disk drives. With solid state drives, the price differences can be steeper. And then I would kind of explain my rationale there. For basic office use, having high speed storage not necessary. Chose standard 1 terabyte drive for more than enough storage for standard office work. Okay. For the types of apps and files, let's say apps used and files generated work, something like that. Okay, we got our storage, and then we're going to choose our video card. Obviously, that doesn't apply to me, and I show you some considerations for if you were like with like Adobe Premiere Pro, for example. So hopefully that gives you a good perspective. So we don't need that. We are going to need next, we're going to need our power supply. And we also need a CPU cooler. So what is a cooler? Well, remember that the brains of the computer get hot. And I'm just going to choose this one, add. And everything that gets hot, we need to have a cooling mechanism so that it can keep running. The reason I chose this model is because I'm just doing standard office-y things, and I'm really not going to need a huge, and I put that in the wrong spot, CPU cooler. And you can just put the type here, single fan air cooler. Or you can put your model number, either will be fine with me. And some of you might read about this and you might see, okay, I can get air coolers or water coolers. Either is gonna be fine. What I would recommend though, is that for some use cases where you have a beefier CPU that you know is gonna be put under some stress for running the latest games or running some very high-end software, 3D modeling software, video editing software, then I would recommend getting a cooler that has more than just one fan like this. You're probably going to want something with that's like a stack of fans like that. Other than that, doesn't really matter that much. It's already going to choose the products that are compatible with the CPU you chose. So just pick, if you want, just pick the one that looks cool to you. Oops. I thought I already picked this. I'm kind of lost. There we are. And then we need to pick our power supply. And I'm picking this before we pick our case for a reason. So our case, a lot of these considerations really don't matter. You can just pick a pretty case, like literally just pick the one you like the most, except your power supply needs to fit inside of it. So first I'm going to choose that, and then we can choose the case. Well, it's adding up how much estimated power I'm going to be using, 148 watts. A lot of scenarios are going to use much more power just because of the video or the graphics card. It's going to add hundreds of watts to that. But for mine, it doesn't use much. So if I'm at 148 watts, let's say that someday I need to start producing videos. So I might need something like one of these. Let's see, watts. I don't see. I'll just add this. See how much it grew. See how much that expanded it. So I would recommend, even in this case, even though I don't need a GPU, I'm going to recommend that you get a power supply that's like double what you need at least. And that's so that you're ensuring yourself that you have room to grow. So if you need a beefier graphics card, something that takes up additional wattage, that you don't have to buy a new power supply. So you're future-proofing it. Now, when you search power supplies, pretty much all of these that you come across on here are already from reputable manufacturers, and they're already pretty good quality. I like to choose gold rating or better, so I am going to check that. And we look at these. Usually the gold rated ones are well above what I was even going to do for mine, which I was going to do one that was like roughly like 400 watts or so. I'll just choose that. Whoa, that power supply. Oh, it just asked for wattage here. Okay. Let's say 750 watts. Why? I prefer gold rating for more durability. And then I might say, this is more than enough. Extra power should we need to add more power-hungry parts, like a more power-hungry CPU, GPU, additional RAM even. All those things, right? All good things. We can add all kinds of pretty lights, and that'll be good. And I forgot to fill this out. Okay. And then we're going to choose, I forgot to choose a motherboard. And this is the big main board that everything connects into. Now, you don't have to go through a lot of research on this. I know some of you know a lot about computer parts, a lot more than me even. You can just choose one that's compatible. So I'm just going to choose more on the low budget end because budget's more important for me for this particular build. And if you have preferences, oh, this has Wi-Fi, oh, this supports the newest RAM standard, DDR5, blah, 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 then do that. What needs to happen is these need to be compatible. So choosing the motherboard before you choose your RAM is actually going to be better. But if it flags, if it says that these parts aren't compatible, you're going to see that this will be like red. It won't just be green up here. And you can click the details and see, oh, the type of RAM I chose doesn't work with my motherboard. And then you can go back and you can click memory, and it's going to filter out the ones that are compatible. So you can just fix that. Okay. Well, let's see. I've got all this now. Don't really need to choose a monitor. Now's the fun part. Now we can choose our case. The reason I had you choose the power supply first is because if you look at this one, it says ATX, modular ATX. That is a certain size that wouldn't fit if we got a really tiny case. But now that I've chosen it, the cases that it filters for me are already going to fit. So let's find us a nice, pretty pink case. Perfect. Right? That's actually very expensive. So I'm going to choose that one. And let's see. Oh, I didn't have you specify. Yeah, for the rationale, I was just going to put it's cool anyway. Cool and it's cheap. And there we go. And so now I put together a fully working office computer. And this would set us back about $600 plus some shipping and tax. Given 2026 and how much some of these parts are marked up, especially the memory, that's pretty standard for just a good standard computer that I would expect to kind of last for a while for standard office use. You don't have to choose operating system or monitor. You can if you want, just for funsies. And after you've provided all this rationale for us, guess what? That's it. You're done, except you need to copy this permalink. You're going to click up here, left button, it says copy permalink, and you're going to paste that here. Oops, I need to change that to black. There we go. And that way, we're going to be able to take your link when we're grading and paste it in a browser tab and literally be able to review and be like, yep, check, 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 check. That makes a complete working computer. Good job. So make sure you do that for us. And this is also fun because you can literally save this for later if you are seriously thinking about building a computer, and that will give you at least a baseline based on that scenario. So make sure that all of this is saved. Mine is. And now you are good to upload. Double check your tables. Make sure you have filled in all of this good and necessary stuff. Fill this in so you don't lose points. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of this. If not, we'll see you in the next lab. Maybe you'll like that one.